everyone, and welcome to today's Play Attention webinar. My name is Amber, and I will be your host. Thank you all for being here. I know it's hard sometimes to take a little bit of time out of your schedule, but we appreciate you being here. We're going to be talking about organization today. As you may or may not know, we are running an 8-part series, webinar series of executive function, different areas. So we've covered initiation and focus, and today we are going to be talking about organization. We are recording this webinar, so if you have to jump off early or you want to share it with someone after the webinar is over, we will be automatically emailing out that recording shortly after the webinar is over, and we will be including some additional pieces of information as well, including the slides today. If at any time you get bumped off the webinar, please do go ahead and click that link again and get reconnected. You'll see down below, and as many of you are probably more familiar with Zoom now than you were last year at this time, you'll see that there are 2 icons. There is a chat box and a raise hand icon. It's hard for us sometimes to be interactive, but occasionally I may ask you questions and you can raise your hand if you agree with that or something, just to try to keep us a little bit more engaged together. Additionally, there is a chat box, and that is where I'm going to ask you to place all of your questions. I can't call on someone if they raise their hand, but I can answer your questions if you put them in the chat box. I'm going to try to get to them as I see them pop up in the chat box, but we do have a very large group today. So if I don't get to those during the webinar, I will work on getting to them at the end. There is a spot for questions at the end. So again, my name is Amber, and I will be your host today. I've spent the last almost 20 years now in education, in secondary and post-secondary education, really helping individuals reach their academic potential, and Play Attention has been a really important part of that. And one of the biggest areas that Play Attention helps you with is building executive function, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. But that is where we are going to start with organization. And so we are going to talk about being organized, because I know that can be difficult for a lot of us. And so let's go ahead and get started. So Benjamin Franklin said, "For every minute spent organizing is an hour earned." And that's really, when I was putting together the information for this webinar, I thought that was a really powerful quote, because when we can take the time to be organized, sometimes it's so hard to be organized and to take time and be organized and work towards that. But when we do it, we see the benefits, and the benefits are huge, because we don't have to look for things. We don't have to wonder where our things are at. We know where they're at, and we can, we can easily access those. But additionally, we can get to where we need to go. We're not late for meetings because we're able to organize our time better. And so I thought that was a really powerful quote to get started. But today we're going to talk about more than that. We're going to talk about why and how and why do you feel disorganized. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to share with me some of the areas you feel like you're struggling with organization. We're going to talk about organization and how it works with executive function. And if you haven't heard the term executive function, no worries. I'm going to go through that as well for you today. We're going to talk about ways to help. So Play Attention is a big way. We'll talk a little bit about that, but I'm going to give you tips that you can start using today, and a fun little activity at the end. If you're able to hang on till the end with us, I'm going to show you how you can create a communication center. It can be for a family, it can be for adults. It really is going to be something that you can use, and it will benefit your organization regardless of who you are. So there'll be a fun little activity at the end that we will touch on for that communication center. Kathleen says she is hearing a slight echo. Let me see if I raise my volume, if that helps a little bit. I know the room I'm in is a little bit empty, so sometimes it does echo, so I'm very sorry for that. So what does organization mean to you? I really want to hear from you. What does organization mean? So go ahead and type in the chat box, what does organization mean to you? And I'll give you all a few minutes here, and then I will share some of those answers with you. And you're also more than welcome to share why you feel that you're struggling with organization, not just what does it mean, but why are you here, right? You're here for a reason. So why are you here? So I'm hearing things like, oh, there's a lot of answers coming in. So thank you so much for that. Creating order, everything in its place, staying on top of tasks. It means being in control of my life. That is a great one because sometimes we think of things with organization, but when we are truly organized, that can really bring control and order to your overall life. A place for everything to belong, being able to find things quickly, prioritizing your tasks. Simplicity, that is a great term. That's a great term to really think about organization as simplicity. Having a plan and being able to find what I need quickly. Constantly decluttering, managing my work and my personal life effectively. And that's another important piece. And we're going to talk about that as well, as how not only is organization important in our professional life, but it's very important in our personal life as well. And those things really cross over. Let's see what else we have here. A place for everything. Neat and orderly appearance in the office, self, and home. Great answer. Knowing where things are, having a place for everything, staying focused, having a plan, being efficient and getting things done when they need to. Focus, that's a great one. We're going to talk about that today. Being efficient and accomplishing goals, making plans, things have their own house. That's a great answer. I always say that at my house, I have a family of four. There's four of us, and I have two teenagers. And as you all may know, sometimes teenagers can be really messy. But I always tell them, everything has a place to live. So everything on our house has its own house. And when you put it back to its own house, it makes it a lot easier for us to find those things later. Compartmentalization. And so that's basically what we're talking about there. So let's see, I'm seeing a lot. James, not driving my wife crazy. That is a great one. Exactly. Things at your fingertips. So thank you so much. There's so many more. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them today, but these are really great. And, you know, those are all things that encompass organization. The ability to have structure, right? Not only in our home life, but our professional life. Grouping, so compartmentalizing, having a place for it to live, all of those different things you said is grouping, right? Grouping those things together. Categorizing. So sometimes we have a group of things, but maybe we want to get even a little bit more detailed with our organization and create categories of things. Streamline. So I heard a lot of that. And when we talk about having less chaos, finding things quickly, being on top of things, that can all fall underneath that things being streamlined. And so organization is so important because it affects so many aspects of our life. So I mentioned professional and personal, but even within those two areas, there are additional ways or areas that organization can really affect. Financial, so whether we're responsible for finances at work in our department, or our personal finances. If we aren't organized in our personal finances, that can really affect a lot of different areas of our life. School. So whether you have a child that is struggling with organization in school, and a lot of families right now, we're hearing that organization is really difficult for them because there are a lot of families that are still e-learning. And we have some families that are e-learning or doing a hybrid, right? So they're part of the time they're at home, part of the time they're at school. And that is another area of where we have to have that organization because we're not in the same place every time. Our household. And so when we can be more organized in our household, we know it gives us more calm. I don't know if you raise your hand if you've felt this way before, but if you have sometimes disorganization in your house, it causes you anxiety. Raise your hand if you've ever experienced that, where you look and you see piles of things everywhere and it just causes you anxiety, kind of like the picture that you see on my screen now. And I've seen a lot of people raise their hands. And it's true, because we know when things aren't where they should be, when there's not that streamline, when there's not that organization, that chaos outside really lends to that chaos inside. And that can really prevent us from hitting that potential that we want, because we have that chaos going on around us. And so it's really important for us not only to have things in our professional life organized, but even actual things within our house organized, and so that we can have that calm. So, effects of disorganization. So, there are a lot of different areas, and this kind of leads me to what we were talking about just a minute ago. It can weigh heavy. Disorganization can weigh heavy on our mental state as well as functionality. It can slow our ability to grow professionally, as well as lead to termination. So we know that oftentimes when individuals are struggling with disorganization at work, it can lead to more cases of them being terminated from their position. And that is cause for anxiety as well. So all of these things really, it's where does one start and where does the other start, right? Where does it begin? Where does it end? We're seeing that comorbidity with all of these different things, with disorganization, with a weak executive function, which we're going to talk about, with anxiety, depression. And so we know when there's disorganization, it does lead to termination in some cases. And so we're going to talk about ways to help you get more organized if that's something that you're experiencing. It can lead to stress and anxiety, which can cause personal health issues. We know that when individuals are experiencing anxiety, that increases our heart rate, that increases our blood pressure. And when those types of things happen, we know that there are health risks associated with that. It brings on stress. And we know there are so many different ways that stress presents itself for our body and for our health. It can lead to a lack of financial health and strength. Right now, some of us are in a difficult time financially, whether we have a small business, whether we've lost our job because of the economy, because of the pandemic that we're experiencing. And so if we have not set ourselves up for healthy financials, sometimes then that can lead to those other areas as well. And so we want to make sure that that organization is going into that financial area as well. It can also affect our productivity, which means professionally, again, it can affect how we perform, but also it affects how we do academically. Who here has struggled with finding something, taking an hour or 2 hours to find that file on the computer? Or they experienced their child not turning assignments in on time because they weren't organized enough to where the assignment was given via e-learning on the computer, even in the classroom, and they didn't write it down. Or they missed the email because they had 6,000 emails in their email box, and they missed it because they just had so many. And so I'm seeing, again, a lot of hands being raised for that. And that is all part of our organization. We don't always think sometimes as email as organization, but I always say our email is like our virtual file cabinet, right? We're getting all of this information in. And if we don't put it in the places where we would put physical things or treat it like we would get physical things, then it very easily can overwhelm us. And then we can't find things and we become disorganized. And now we're wasting time and we're losing that productivity because of being disorganized. We can also see that we're not meeting timelines. So I mentioned that earlier, with assignments being due, but the same thing can happen in our job performance as well if we are not finding things, or if we are not on top of our assignments or our work projects. We may miss deadlines and miss pieces of information. Right now, I have a senior in high school, and so we are still e-learning. And of course, so that brings some different and some areas that cause us to pivot, if you will, but also we're working on deadlines because of college applications. And so those are things, again, just another thing on top of what I'm responsible for at my job, what I'm responsible for at home, how to keep things organized. But now on top, there's a whole nother aspect. But the great thing is, once you start learning how to be organized, you can easily spread that into other areas of your life. So now you can just implement that organization and that new responsibility that you have. And again, we're going to talk about how you can do that. And then home disorganization can show poor time management, or even excessive clutter can affect your overall well-being. So we talked about that earlier. We know that it can cause us mental health. And a lot of individuals are struggling right now anyways with their mental health because, again, we are in months and months and months of, we called it in the beginning, we did a lot of webinars over the summer for families and for individuals. And we talked about, Zoom and learning from home and all of these different things are new normal. And now it really is our normal because we haven't had any change yet. And so we're seeing individuals are struggling because of, quarantine burnout and not being able to do all of the things that they are used to doing. Plus we're in the holiday season. And so we want to try to, in those areas that we can, benefit or change for the benefit. And so that's not affecting our mental health as well. So why do we have this underlying condition? Why are we struggling? Is it that I'm just disorganized, or is there a reason behind it? And we know this is a great article here that I'm sharing with you. And again, you're going to get the slides, and I've got the link in here so you can read the article. But Robin Hurtado, she's an outpatient coordinator, mentions that oftentimes when individuals are struggling with disorganization, it can be that they have an underlying condition. It might be that they're struggling from attention deficit disorder. It can be that sometimes they're struggling with depression. Sometimes they're struggling with obsessive compulsive disorder. And so it's happening because of that disorder, right? So we have this condition, and one of those symptoms, if you will, side effects, comorbidity, is the fact that you're struggling with organization. So how do we fix that, right? How do we say, okay, well, I have this diagnosis, and part of that diagnosis is that, I'm struggling with disorganization. And so how do I fix that? How do I, get to the other side of that? Because I'm struggling with attention, or I'm struggling with sadness, or I'm struggling with all of these other things. How do I get to the other side of that? And we're going to talk about that. But another piece is, oftentimes you may say, well, I've never been diagnosed with any of those things, but I've always been very, very disorganized. Or, in high school or elementary school, when I was in school before I left home, I was always pretty organized. I stayed on top of things. But now that I've become an adult, all of a sudden I'm struggling with this organization, but I've never been diagnosed, and I don't feel like I struggle with focus. I don't feel like I struggle with this, but this is an area that I've always had issues with. That's where executive function comes into play. So we know oftentimes individuals struggle with weak executive function. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the term executive function, really the easiest way for me to describe it is it's like the CEO of the brain. It helps us plan, prioritize, organize. It helps us avoid procrastination, helps us with sustained attention. It helps us with emotional control. So basically, it's mental skills that we use day in and day out to be effective. Now, obviously, as children, those are things that are important for us, but even more when we become adults, because we have to have working memory, which is our ability to problem solve. We have to have flexible thinking so that if something changes quickly, I'm able to move and I'm not so rigid that I just can't even think about moving to that next thing, that I can pay attention in that meeting. So I'm making sure I'm taking all of those pieces of information in. So when I leave the meeting, I know what I'm responsible for and what my deadlines are. And these are skills, again, that we use to lead a very successful life. So one of those areas of executive function is organization. So oftentimes we see that maybe somebody has an underlying condition of ADHD, or again, depression, anxiety, sometimes a learning disability. But the interesting thing about those different diagnoses is we see that those are also comorbid with weak executive function. So whether you've had a diagnosis or not, if you're struggling in some of those areas, it can definitely mean that you're struggling with weak executive function. Now, the great thing about executive function skills is they can be learned. Just like I learned to tie my shoe, just like I learned to read, just like I learned to drive a car, attention, organization, memory, those can all be skills that we're taught. But again, we have to learn, we have to build those skills and we have to learn them, right? Just like we learn to tie our shoes. And so when we start talking about organization and attention and memory and mental flexibility, those become a lot harder for us to wrap our minds around of a skill that I can learn, right? Because when you think about learning to drive, learning to tie your shoe, you're actually doing something. It's very hands-on. And organization can be hands-on, but the attention piece of it, the memory piece of it, that is where we have more of those intangible skills. But the great thing is they can be taught, and there's different ways that we can work on building those skills and learning how to be organized, learning how to sustain our memory, learning how to have that mental flexibility. And that's really what we want to talk about through this 8-part webinar series here at Play Attention, is those different areas and what we can do now, what we can implement to really help you build those skills. Now, the great thing is our brains are moldable and shapeable. Given any time in our life, we can learn a new skill regardless of our age. It was what once thought years ago that when we reached a certain age, we could not learn anything else, but we know that now we know that that is untrue. And so we here at Play Attention work with a wide variety of individuals, children and adults, because it's never too late to start building our skills. And what we want to do is, here's one of the pieces that we're going to offer today in our Play Attention, or in our organization webinar from Play Attention is, you may be wondering, okay, well, am I struggling with something else? Maybe I haven't been diagnosed and I've struggled with organization, but I think back and I think, well, maybe sometimes I'm a little quick to rush to things. Maybe it takes me a little bit longer to learn things. And so Play Attention has what's called the focus assessment. And this is a norm-based test of attentional control. And the great thing about this assessment is it is there to help you look at different areas of your attentional control or your executive function. So this is an assessment that anyone can take. You can take it right from home. And basically what this assessment does is it starts to pinpoint areas of your executive function that you might be struggling with. Now, what it does is it compares you to your peer group. So you're going to be compared to other individuals your age, and it's going to see where you fall on that norm range, because for these areas of attentional control, there's a norm range that individuals will normally fall into, right? And so by taking this assessment and comparing you to your peers, we see, are you below the norm? Are you on the norm? Are you above the norm? So are you strong in this area, or are you struggling in this area? And that's the great thing about this assessment, is it's not something used necessarily for a diagnostic, but it's used to really help pinpoint where are you struggling. Is it just organization? Or are you struggling with your sustained attention? Are you struggling with your time management skill? Are you struggling with impulse control? Are you struggling to filter out distractions? So it's going to touch on all of those pieces. Now, normally here at Play Attention, we offer this assessment for $49.95. With that, you will get the link sent to you. You will do the assessment. It takes 20 minutes. Again, you can do it right from home. And then we do a review. It's about 30 minutes. You'll do a review with one of our personal executive functions coaches. And basically what they're going to do is they are going to tell you what that assessment says and what areas that you might be struggling with a little bit with your executive function. So if you would like to do this assessment and just kind of get a clearer picture of what your executive function is looking like, we are offering it for all our webinar attendees at half price. So if you're interested in doing this assessment, you can type in focus with your phone number, and that way one of our associates will reach out to you, and they will get your information because we need your birth date, and we'll obviously need a form of payment, and then we will send that assessment out to you. So it's just something that you can do to just kind of get a clearer picture. If you've just always experienced things like this, or you have a child that you're not quite sure if it's the e-learning environment that they're in, or if it's something bigger that they're struggling with, this will help give you some answers as you move forward. So how do we improve? Okay, so we've talked about what organization looks like, what we feel like it looks like. We talked about how it can be detrimental to us. We talked about why we might be experiencing that executive function struggle or that organization struggle. So how do we build organization and executive function as a whole, right? Because there are different areas. Again, 8-part series we're doing. We're on part 3 now, but what are we going to do to help build those skills? Well, we want to strengthen those skills with cognitive skill building. Play Attention offers that. And so I'm going to touch a little bit, just very briefly, on Play Attention, kind of what it encompasses, and then we're going to get into some day-to-day things that you can start using when you're done today, as well as that fun activity on creating a communication center. So you can start with Play Attention. We have a very thorough program that helps individuals build executive function, and it's customized specifically to their needs. It's rooted in the Attention Foundation because we need attention to do all of those other things, to be organized, to build our memory, all of these different things. We need to have that foundation of attention. So it's rooted in that. We also have our Executive Function 101 course, and we'll link that in the webinar for you, or at the follow-up for you as well. It's a 5-week course that we offered over the summer, but it's still available, where it touches on all of those different areas of executive function and provides you with activities that you can do, effective for both children and adults. Additional strategies we're going to talk about, you can use at home, you can use at work, and you can use at school. So there are some different ways that we can really focus on building the skills. But when we talk about building skills, we have to have that neural pathway being built. Okay, so basically when we learn something new, our brain creates a new pathway. And whether we know a little bit of that skill or we have it permanently depends on if we can recall that information later. As soon as we start learning that skill, that pathway starts to develop. And as we build that skill, as we get stronger and stronger, so does that pathway. Now, when we learn things permanently, like tying our shoes, driving a car, unless there's an injury to our brain, for the rest of our life, we can recall that skill and do that skill. You can learn the same thing with different cognitive skills that make up executive function. So you can learn that with your organization. You can learn that with all of the different areas that we talked about, but we have to have the right kind of feedback to be able to do that training. We have to give you feedback of that very intangible skill, and then be able to practice it. So we are creating a platform where you can practice it and build that skill with permanency. So think of anything you've learned permanently and think about the educational method that you used to build that, and it was very deliberate and very hands-on, right? And so that's what Play Attention does. And so we have a program that is used neurotechnology inspired by NASA technology that takes cognitive skills and behavioral shaping and integrates it with feedback. And so what that looks like a little bit here on the screen is our 3-part program. So we have our technology, and what our technology does is it actually picks up your attention in real time. So it picks up that brain activity that's giving out that very specific attention signature. So when we're in our optimal level of attention, our brain gives off a very specific signature, and this device is listening for it. And why that's important is because it's integrated with the different cognitive skills. So you are going to be triggering the gains with just your attention alone. So you're going to get immediate feedback when you're paying attention and when you're not. Because if you're not paying attention, again, you can't be organized. You can't strengthen your memory. You can't do all of those things, that time management, all of those things that you want to be able to do to have that skill. We have to, again, have that attention. We also have a behavioral shaping input that's integrated as well, and that really helps us regulate those self-distracting behaviors, the fidgets, the getting easily frustrated, different things like that. Now, again, I want to give you some things that you can use today, because Play Attention is a long-term program. It's something that we're going to work one-on-one with you and build a program where you're going to go through it, continuously be challenged, and eventually graduate the program. And now we will be offering a webinar next week. December 17th will be our regular Play Attention webinar, where over the hour of the webinar, we are going to talk about Play Attention at length. So if you're interested in learning more about Play Attention, one of the options for you is to type in webinar. Like all of our webinars, they're recorded and they are offered for free. And so if you're interested in learning more about Play Attention, type in webinar. We will register you. You will get the link like you got for this, and you can learn a lot more about Play Attention. So what are other strategies I can use today? So I know a lot of you are here and you say, well, what can I do right now? I really want to start 2021 out more organized and really be more effective at home, at school, at work, financially, all of those different areas. I want to improve my organization so it improves my overall health and well-being. Number one, focus on what is important. Sometimes we have a tendency to do too much too fast, right? So we want to see change. We're so excited. 2021 is happening. 2020 has been a difficult year for some individuals, and we think, okay, 2021 is going to be totally different. I'm going to do all of these things. Well, we can't sustain all of the things at one time, right? We can't change our diet, exercise every single day, and all of those other things. Be organized, clean out my closet, do this, do that. It's too many things at one time. We have to start small and build, almost like a layered process. Because if we start with 5 brand new things at one time, in 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to be very, very hard to sustain that level of activity. And then we're going to quit, and we're going to quit all of those. And I know many of you have probably experienced that in the past. And so what we want to do is we want to focus on what is important. What is the number one thing that I want to get organized? One thing. And let me start working on that. The other things will come. We will work on those other things. But what is most important for me to move forward? Start in that one place and with that one area. Marie Kondo does the tidying up, right? How to, have more joy and have no clutter around. And her methodology is to start with one group of things, not just your bedroom, but your clothes. So the way she has you organize is you find clothes everywhere, right? So clothes in our bedroom. We put winter clothes in a different area. If we happen to have some clothes hanging in the hall closet, whatever, you bring that all together and then you organize those areas. You don't just do a room, because a room has so many different things in it. It's very easy to get overwhelmed. So start in one place and with one type of area, right? Clothing, papers, whatever that case may be. And sometimes it's good to start with a little low-hanging fruit, right? If you think, wow, my papers are out of control. I have papers that are 10 years old and I have just stacks and stacks and stacks. Maybe we start with something that's a little bit smaller, right? Because we want that success as well as we're moving through. Take inventory of what you have, what works well, and what's not working well. So think about over this last year, I'm sure many of you started out 2020 with the fact or a goal or an affirmation or whatever the case of starting to be more organized. So have any of those strategies that you implemented, have they started or have they stuck, right? Have any of those things stuck? If they've stuck, that strategy is successful for you. So that's something that has worked for you. What is something that you wanted to do, but it didn't stick? What does that look like? And so really when we start talking about organization, it's not just I'm getting in there right away, I'm doing it. We have to do some self-reflection. We really have to think, okay, we have to create a plan and really be methodical as we move forward with this. So you need to look at that. Take inventory of how you're currently using your time. So are we spending a lot of time on social media? Are we spending a lot of time on Netflix? Netflix is it's wonderful and it's terrible all at the same time. And I've been guilty of this as well, because you start watching a series, back in the day, you had to wait a whole week before the next, episode came. And now you can watch a whole season of something in one sitting, right? And it's so quick, you get done with the series and in like 10 seconds, it's got the next one loaded for you, right? And it can be very easy to be sucked into that. And then 3, 4, 5 hours later, all of a sudden, I have lost hours of time. And now some of those things I wanted to have in place, some of those organizational things I needed to do every single day to stay on task, they're no longer being done because I'm not using my time the way that I want to. And so we have a lot of information on time management, and we're going to talk about that as well. But one piece that we shared during time management, and I think it's effective here as well, because organization and time management are very closely related. When we talk about time management, a really good activity to see how am I spending my time is to spend a day, 2 days, 3 days a week logging your time. And not as a judgmental piece, but just to see where's your time going. You might be spending, an extra hour doing something that you didn't even realize that you were doing. And it was such a small thing, but when you add it up over time, it takes a big chunk of day out. So that's another way to really inventory how you're using your time. Get rid of things that you don't need. So this is the piece when we start talking about whether you're organizing your house or you're organizing your office. If there are things there that you do not need, that you do not use, get rid of them. Because if we haven't touched it in a year, there's a lot of theories behind clothing in your closet to hang all of your clothes a certain way. And when you wear something, you flip that hanger around. And at the end of the year, if you have hangers that started the way that your year started, those are things that you don't necessarily need any longer, right? So there's a lot of methodology behind that, but getting rid of what you don't need. And again, start small. Sometimes we think, oh my gosh, I have so many of this, but I have a little bit of sentimental value to that. So don't start there. Start somewhere that's a lot easier for you to purge those things. Schedule breaks. Sometimes when we start organizing, we can get so wrapped up in the activity that we lose sense of time. We lose sense of other things that need to be done. So make sure you're setting a plan for yourself and creating an opportunity for you to take breaks. So does that maybe mean set a timer? If a timer doesn't work, see if somebody in your family will come and make that connection with you 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, whatever that looks like for you. So you're having that, you're not having that time blindness, right? You're actually still engaged in the activity, but you're engaged in what's happening around you as well. Allow time. Again, organizing and become organized is not something that's going to happen overnight. When we talk about building cognitive skills that are needed to be organized, we are talking, 8 months to a year in some cases. That doesn't mean we don't see any results in that, but it's a process that you're going to build on and you're going to strengthen your brain. It's like exercise for your brain. And it's not something that's going to happen just overnight. And so we need to make sure that we're creating the time, allowing ourselves to have the time that we need to do what's realistic. It's not going to happen overnight. And again, if we're starting small and then building, we're going to keep that. We're going to be very mindful of that. Ask for help or delegate. Sometimes especially with a family at home, it can be very easy for one individual to take on a lot of it. And then because they're so overwhelmed, things don't get done. Part of what we'll talk about in our activity that's coming up next, our Family Communication Center, allows you to start delegating. Put something on even younger children. Again, if you create spaces for things to belong, it's a very easy task for them for when they're done playing with their toys, put them in a bin and put that bin back where it belongs, right? And that's such a simple thing, but sometimes if we don't create that environment for our things, it's very hard to get even smaller children to follow through with some of that. And so by creating a space for things and really looking at how our house is set up, what expectations we want, you can really start to delegate. Teenagers can cook, right? They know how to do it. You can start teaching them how to do that. That way you don't have to be organized every single night to be like, oh my goodness, what am I going to make for supper tonight? You can delegate some of those things. And we often don't think about that because we just think, oh, it's because I'm so unorganized. I can't determine what we're going to have for dinner ahead of time. I'm too overwhelmed. It's causing me anxiety. It's easier to just do this. But if we sit down and create a plan and start to delegate things, things become a lot easier and we start to see that organization happen, right? So those are just some different areas that we can really focus on building our organizational skills. Again, do not do too much too fast, because again, if we do too much too fast, it's unrealistic and it creates that feeling of failure. And we don't want that. We want that success as we're moving through. Okay. So now I have a fun little activity. And again, this video as well as a PDF will be available for this little fun family communication center, but it doesn't have to be just for families. It can be for couples, it can be for individuals. There is a lot of benefit in creating a communication center. And so, but even as an individual, because you still have appointments, you still have to cook, you still have a grocery shop, you still have to find your keys, right? And so creating a communication center, whether it's for a family, again, or an individual, is something that's going to be very beneficial. So what is a family communication center? It is our ability to put things in one spot in our house, okay? So it's a system for family communication, and it's a great way to stay organized. So I'm going to show you some examples, but it can be a calendar. It can be a calendar and a whiteboard. We have a calendar and a whiteboard together in our house. And because forever my teenagers would say, oh, we're out of milk. Oh, we're out of toothpaste. Oh, we're almost out of this. We're out of that. Well, in the moment, as they're telling me, of course, I'm not focused on that. And so those things weren't getting remembered on the grocery list. And so now we have a section on our whiteboard that is for a grocery list. So if you use the last of something, or if you notice that something's almost out, you write it on the whiteboard. And that way, when it comes time for me to put my list together to grocery shop, I can see all of those things right there in front of me. So it's a way for us to communicate. You can put notes on there. I ran out to get this, or I have an appointment on this day. Whether you use a calendar for that or you use it individually, that's completely up to you on what works best for your family. It's a great tool to have because it provides visual cues, okay? So when we see things visually, oftentimes it's a lot easier for us to remember, right? If we write it down and we turn the page, sometimes that's hard for us to recall later. And so by having it right there in a very central place in your home, you have that visual component. It allows family activities to be all in one place. Right now, there's not as many activities happening as there was last year at this time, but as activities happen, as things start to increase, as we get back to a new normal, if you're like me, I have kids that do two totally different things. And so sometimes that overlaps schedules, right? So we need to know when there are days that things overlap. And so we can decide, okay, we need to do this, whatever the case may be. And so it allows everything to be in one place. You can also put all of your important papers there. When mail comes in, bills that are due, papers that you have to sign, different pieces like that. If you have a folder, you can have different folders, school folders, bill folder, important paper folder, but it gives you that ability to have those pieces of information all in one place. And it gives everything a designated spot. Now, of course, there are going to be a lot of other things in your home that you're going to have to create a designated spot for, but this is a really good start because it gives you a place to take all of those papers, all of those things in your head that are schedules, the appointments, the different pieces, and now it puts it all in one place. Now it has a home to live. And it's a great way to start. And then when you find success with this, now you can start implementing these tools other places. So on top of that, next, then we can say, okay, why is it important? What can we do? What does this look like? Despite having online calendars and phone reminders, it's easy for families to get overwhelmed with activities, have papers scattered about, or forget about meals. So again, this is creating a spot for all of these places, all of these things to live. Shared space with shared responsibility. So maybe you create a menu and you say, Monday night, Johnny, it's your turn to cook. Tuesday night is this person's. Wednesday, Thursday is my job. Friday, we're going to order pizza, right? This is what that looks like. And it's giving them shared responsibility. But not only is it giving it a place for things to live so they're not all over the house, it starts to teach your children organization, or your spouse or partner organization as well, because it's requiring them to put the information they want from you in a specific area as well. So if they're getting, I have to do this activity, put it on the calendar. We need more milk, put it on the whiteboard, right? It's delegating that so it doesn't all have to live in your mind or your world. And it's a great method for family organization. So again, whether you're a family of 7, a family of 2, or an individual, this methodology of creating this center is essential to avoid daily chaos, because everything is in one place. Now, yes, we still need to have mental flexibility because something might happen, right? Somebody might get sick, something might get canceled, last minute something gets added. But instead of, oh my goodness, what do I have today now that this new thing's coming at me, you know what you have, and now you can make that adjustment. It's a lot easier because everything is there right in front of you. Let me get this to start again for us. I'm talking longer than the video will let me run. So deciding what you want in your communication center. So I'm going to show you some examples here in a minute, but really it's up to you. And this should be a family decision. This is something that you should work together, but a schedule, these are some ideas that you can use. A schedule, a calendar, baskets for information, notebooks, whiteboard, chalkboard, menu, grocery list, folders, backpack hooks, right? Again, if some of you are still at home for learning, that's understandable. However, eventually when you go back in the classroom, having a place for them to hang their backpacks is a really great idea because it helps teach them organization too. They come home from school, they hang their backpack up, they take out the homework that they need. Maybe they have a homework folder, right? And so they put that there. You can put clocks in there, right? A clock schedule. If you have a child that isn't quite understanding yet of time, you can create a clock that has color coded that, okay, this time on the clock is your playtime. But once the clock gets to here, it's homework time, or now it's reading time, or whatever the case may be. So all of those can live there. And it just doesn't have to be a hook for backpacks. It can be a hook for your purse, for your bag that you take for work, your lunchbox, whatever the case may be, because when we have all of those things together, our organization becomes a lot better. And now these other things are falling into place. Like it's easier for me to leave in the morning. I'm not forgetting those things as I walk out of the house. And I think the next slide here is going to show us, oh, nope, one more, and then it's going to show us some examples. Decide what you want your communication center to be like. First of all, you want to make it accessible to everyone, right? So keep that in mind when you're creating something. If you have small children, make something that is accessible for them as well. Make it where you can see it and where you're going to see it every single day, whether it's right by the door, whether it's in the kitchen, wherever it's at. Make sure it's somewhere that it can be seen. Allow everyone to do a last scan of the family activities to do and important papers. And that's why they say sometimes it's great to put it by the door or the door that you leave or whatever the case may be, because it gives you that last. Or if you're still new to this, you can take a picture with your phone, right? Before you leave for the day, because it's all going to be in one place. You take a picture with your phone, you have that reminder for later on. And then finally, here is some inspiration. So here are a couple different pieces of inspiration. Again, this is going to be available for you. You can go to these websites because they have some fabulous ideas on there. But one has a corner. You see there's a clock there. There's a couple little inspirational quotes there. There's folders. There's a place for your keys. That's another thing that's near my whiteboard and calendar, is a hook for our keys, because we have many different drivers in the house, and sometimes someone will take someone else's car for whatever reason. And if you put the keys back where they belong on the hook, then we don't have to worry about that later. So, a really great piece that shows the backpack hooks, a bench, all of that different things. And then there's one that's more of a whiteboard calendar type of thing, where it gives them down below is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and it's a little menu, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's a place for them to do extra chores, where if they do extra chores, they can, I guess, earn more allowance. There's a schedule there. And so a little bit more simple, a little bit easier, maybe easier, doesn't cost you as much in the beginning to do, but you can always add to it later. And so there are a lot of options out there. You can spend a lot or you can spend a little, but starting to create that environment where you're putting that communication all in one place is very, very helpful. Few last tips as we wrap up this little activity. Don't overthink it. Sometimes when we overthink things, again, we go too much, too fast, and it can be really difficult for us to sustain. So don't overthink it. Start small. Maybe just start with a little whiteboard for your grocery list. Maybe just start with a calendar if you don't have anything. Start small. You can always add to it. You can always layer that as you move forward. Take things down that you don't need. As you start to do this, if you're like, oh, we never even use that, get rid of it. Again, get rid of it. Create that organization. Make sure you keep your schedule up to date. Don't just do it once and then never look at it again, right? We have to use it. It has to be a living, breathing document, communication center, and get your whole family on board. Sit down together and say, okay, we need to become more organized as a family. What are things that are going to help us do that? And get everybody on the same page, because when you can all do it together, it makes it a lot more effective as we move forward. So just a fun little activity that we wanted to share that is something that you can start right away. We're almost to the weekend. We're almost to 2021, and that's a really great activity to start out your new year with a little bit more organization without a lot of overthinking in that. So as we wrap up today, what are next steps, right? What can you do? So we gave you the list of different things you could start right away. You can start that communication calendar. Again, all of that information is going to be provided to you in the follow-up that you will be receiving here in the next couple hours. However, if you're interested in learning more about play attention and what a customized plan would look like for you, type consult and your phone number in the box, and we will schedule a time. All of our consults are free. They take about 45 minutes to an hour. We'll go through play attention in detail. We'll talk about how it would be customized specifically for you, for your child, for your family, because we do have where the whole family can use that. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and type consult in there and type in your phone number to schedule that. If you're interested in the upcoming play attention webinar, which again is going to go through play attention and won't give you as much customization, but it will talk about play attention, so you'll learn about that. Go ahead and type in webinar. We will automatically register you for that. If you are interested in more about your attention and your executive function, and you want to take that focus assessment at half price, go ahead and type in focus and your phone number. And again, we will give you a call to schedule that. And I see a lot of individuals putting information in. If there's a specific time that you want us to call, you can put that information in as well. So as we wrap up today, I'm going to run through the chat box and see if there were any questions that I missed. However, if there's any questions that you have now on your mind, please feel free to add those. Let's see here. See lots of interest, so that is great. Okay. Well, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I know time can be really, really valuable right now, so we appreciate you spending almost an hour with us today. Is time management a separate webinar within the 8-part series? Yes, we're going to be talking about time management separately. So Tony, just keep an eye out for that, and we will be advertising that when it gets a little bit closer. So definitely something that is helpful. I did see a question about health insurance. Unfortunately, since we are an educational product, traditional insurance does not cover play attention. However, we've had a lot of families have success with their health savings account and their flexible spending. If your doctor is suggesting cognitive therapy, cognitive training, this qualifies for that. So something that's really important. So if you're interested in learning more about the FSA or HSA or what to talk to them about to see if they'll cover it, you can go ahead and type that in the box, and we'll make sure that we talk to you about that as well. The focus is half price. That's what is half price right now. Normally our focus assessment is $49.95. So it's a right around, I think 25, 24 something is that price. I think right around $25. So again, thank you so much for the time that you spent with me today. We appreciate it. If you need anything from us, all of our information is down here on the bottom. You can always call us directly. You can also visit our website. You can schedule consultations through that. We have a lot of great videos on there as well. Thank you so much again. We appreciate it. If you've requested information, we will get back to you. There's a lot of requests, so be a little bit patient with us. And here in the next couple couple hours, we will be sending out that webinar with all of the information from today. If you're interested in that focus assessment, remember we do need to get payment from that, so you will need to provide us with a way to contact you so that we can get that payment information, preferably over the phone. We do call international, so that's not an issue, but if you'd like to provide your email address, we can always send over an order form as well for that. So again, thank you so much. My name is Amber, and I appreciate your time. Have a wonderful rest of your week and happy holidays. Bye-bye.